Welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to thank each of you for joining us today. Today, I'm happy to announce our guest, which is Chris Willis. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Chris is the Chief Marketing Officer for a very cool company called Acrolinx. So, Chris, we'll get into that here in just a moment. But before we do, talk to me about how your life and work routine has been interrupted by COVID-19.
Well, you're in my house, Kevin, so that's the first thing. We closed our offices right about February 25th, a little bit earlier than mandated, and went home. Our staff works all over the United States. Our headquarters are in Berlin, Germany. What we really experienced over the course of this time period was a process of reinventing the way that we communicate, the way that we work together, and really trying to expand communication and strengthen the business from within, focus on how we become a better, stronger business. This initiative internally, Acrolinx Strengthen, has been about making the business stronger in this time where we have a little bit more time to focus on our business.
So on that topic of time, do you find yourself with that time being more productive or less productive given the constraints of the pandemic?
I don't have an hour commute anymore, so that's the first thing. So the ability to get up, work out, and just come in here. My office is now very close to my house, and by very close, in it. And I don't have strong work-life balance boundaries. So I think that I and many other people in our organization really have probably increased their productivity just because, A, we work in an always-on environment internationally, and B, I can hear my computer ding wherever I am. So if something comes up, I'm very reachable.
Now, you and I both work with a lot of the very big technology companies out there. And a lot of them are telling their people, you know what, we may in fact make this permanent. Having you come in through the Silicon Valley commutes or commutes like you have there, they're just like, we could be more productive with our time. So how do you think this will change, even after the pandemic?
I've heard that. I've heard the whole idea of maybe we can work more remote, but then I've heard the other side of it, which is I need to get out of here. And we've opened our office to people that want to go. Our office is in Waltham, Massachusetts. And if you want to be in the office because you just can't be in your house anymore, that's available to you. And we have protocols in place and there are rules and what have you. But people want to get back to the program that they work best under, which is to get up and maybe go to the gym and grab something at Starbucks and then go to the office. And some of those things are available now. And we're starting to see that happen more. Parents with kids at home, if there was an office available, they'd be at it. So I'll be interested to see how this goes forward once school is a thing again, once childcare is a thing again. That I want to be out of my house, or is it that I want everybody else to be out of my house? I'm not sure. The one interesting thing that I'm seeing, though, is that from a hiring standpoint, as we think about hiring, the reason that we have an office in North America is essentially because I wanted one. I think that in general, my position has always been we work best when we're together. A lot of the context is gained in the passing by somebody's desk.
Yes.
Well, that's not a possibility right now. Yeah. And are we now more open to hire the best talent wherever the best talent lives? And I think the answer is more every day becoming yes. It's less relevant where somebody sits and more relevant what they bring to the organization. And we've built the communication model now to be able to work from anywhere. It has to happen.
Chris and I have known each other for many years, and I was fascinated when he took over a leadership position there at Acrolinx, because the work they do is actually using artificial intelligence to help mold content to strategy. And I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. Two of my favorite topics. So, one of the things they really want to do is focus on getting messaging right across multinational organizations, clear around the world, different languages, different regions, different people, different cultures. So on that note, Why? Let's start out, Chris, by just saying, why is it so important to try to unify messages across an enterprise?
Well, I mean, if we start with the marketing use case and think about the standardization of brand, right? So companies have spent millions and millions of dollars developing a brand. And why? Because the brand is their biggest single asset. Take a global bank, for instance. Their brand is valued in the multi-billions of dollars. What they gain from that is, well, there's a number of benefits, but if you think at the basic level, it's volume value. So you're bringing more people are coming to your organization because they recognize your brand. The second thing is the premium that you can gain by having a strong brand. So you can do more business, create more margin, sell at a higher rate because of your brand. And if people don't understand what I mean, how many of you are driving a German car? A car is a car. It gets you from one place to another. But if you picked a BMW, you picked it because of the brand, not because it's a better car necessarily than a Toyota. You paid a premium for a brand. And so what goes into that? And it's really the consistency, clarity, and character associated with all of the consumer touch points. And what companies don't generally do is govern that process. So I've got everything up on my whiteboard about how I create content. I've got the words we like to use, the style guidelines that we adhere to, the level of readability, the audience suitability, so all the personas and the way that I need to create content for the persona. I got my tone of voice. I've got my inclusiveness levels, the emotion that I want to build into my content. And it's all documented. And it's something that I take to the board and I show them, and we know we have our shit together. We're creating great content. Only nobody in my organization cares about that. It's very difficult to manage that across thousands of writers. And what makes it worse is that most of these people aren't writers, right? They're people like you and I that have a job and happen to be a subject matter expert and write. So I'm not necessarily a great writer. I'm just a person that knows a thing. Yeah. And I'm not thinking about any of those things on the whiteboard. I'm simply thinking about getting my thoughts across, which means that I have to have now, as an organization, this copywriting pool that takes all this and adds that consistency, clarity, and character to the content that's been created by the subject matter expert. And in a perfect world, Kevin, we'd have those things.
Yes.
But most companies don't have that. So, I was talking to an insurance company in London last week, and we were talking through their issues. And the issue was, we don't create great content. Mm-hmm. Why not? Our business creates our content. Cool. Who fixes your content? Nobody. What do you mean? Business writes it. It moves to production. We don't present great content. We don't align our brand. And so by being able to govern that process and create content that sounds like the business, that resonates with your audiences, you're increasing both that volume value and the exponential value of your brand. You're increasing the overall value of your brand by eliminating fragmentation.
Awesome. So now let's talk about the artificial intelligence component there. A statement from your website says, AI is revolutionizing content writing. How is AI revolutionizing content creation?
So our platform, you can think of it as, if we were to personify our platform, I like to call our platform a piece of software, but if we thought of it as a person, it becomes your best copy editor. And the way that it becomes that is the same way that you would onboard an employee. It learns how you write. It learns all of those things. So we talked about terminology. We talked about style rules. We talked about the readability level, the education level of the audience you're creating it for, how you form your tone of voice, the liveliness of your content. It learns all that. And just like a person, it sits right next to your writers and helps to guide them to write that way. But it does it 24 hours a day at an infinite level. We're doing billions of checks a month across all of our customer base. It's something that's not sustainable as a human. And the interesting thing about it is that as you write and as you make suggestions to the platform, it learns and it gets smarter. So I see things happen with my implementation of Acrolinx that amaze me all the time. I have very specific terminology that I want to manage to, and some of it gets fairly complex. And our implementation of Acrolinx is learning as it goes to create the content that I want. So, simple example, I get really hung up on using the words content quality. right? Because content quality is subjective. Content quality is a commodity that you get in Word and Google Docs. That's not what we do. We do essentially strategy aligned content. We align content with your goals and guidance in your organization. And our implementation of Acrolinx gates our organization. So nothing comes in that doesn't go through Acrolinx first. And if we have external writers that don't know that I'm hung up on content quality,
right,
don't worry, Acrolinx does. And when he reads it, he throws back, no, we don't say that here. What we say is this. And so it's pushed back to our authors, whoever they are, before it ever reaches me. I don't look at anything that doesn't have an 80 Acrolinx score or better. An 80 Acrolinx score means that from a consistency, clarity, and character standpoint, it makes sense. It looks like us. It's at the right level. It's using my words. And it does that, like I said, 24 hours a day for as many documents as you can throw at it.
So, Chris, does it do that? Does your solution, and I think the words you use to describe your solution, if I got this right, it's an advanced linguistics analytic engine. Is that how you describe it?
That's how a scientist describes it, yes.
Okay, got it. So if I read the paper, and I do read the paper and read everything, it seems like every day, and what I'm seeing here is there's a lot of companies that are mismanaging their message. Either they have a rogue leader or CEO that's tweeting something, and suddenly, there's a swarming effect, and social media goes against them, and they have to, like CrossFit. That's an example, right? They sold themselves yesterday because the leader kept saying the wrong things, and boycotts and protests and everything else. A few weeks later, he has to sell his company. So
I am infinitely aware of this situation with CrossFit.
Got it. So, I mean, that seems like an example of somebody with no filters.
Mm-hmm. 100%. That's a solid example of lack of content governance, right? It's a consumer touch point. So regardless of where you're putting out, we use the word content, but it could be communications, it could be customer experience. Yeah. It's whatever you're putting out into the world. And as we go through this digital shift, every interaction that I have is a part of my customer experience. It's part of that digital shift. And in the case of Greg Glassman, no filter on this guy. And we've known this for a decade or more, that there is no filter on him. But as you said, in the last week, things escalated very quickly to the point where the company's been sold as of, the paperwork is in process. It'll be sold as of July 1st and under new management, which for those of us involved in the community really don't understand what's going to happen next, but it is what it is. What we do is when we are the gatekeeper in between the content creation and the outside world, we're looking for those types of issues. A very real example of that is we have a customer that's engaged in cloud storage. And there's language that's used in cloud storage around the master-slave relationship of the databases.
Yes.
That is inappropriate. Whether it's aligned with the way that the technology language was or not, I think that today we can all agree that it's a simple lack of thought and sensitivity. Acrolinx can identify and create the removal of, replacement of. And that's just gating the organization to essentially, in that case, inclusive language, to remove problematic language that serves no purpose other than being dangerous or risk-filled.
So, Chris, tell me, when you're working with a large multinational, and there are different cultures, different languages, different meanings for the same word across the same language, how does Acrolinx and your AI technology, help a company deal with that?
So in general, the on-ramping to a new implementation is to learn the company's style and terminology. So like you said, everybody's different. So if I'm a bank, I'm going to have very specific banking terminology that allows us to speak the way that we speak as a bank. Benefits of being able to teach the system those words is that I can onboard new employees very quickly. New people can write content and they don't need to know those words. The system will implement those. If I'm a consumer products manufacturer, I have a whole separate terminology directories. The first thing is learn all of that. And then it's the ability of your writers to create provide feedback on how the system prompts them, so that it is this feedback loop of constant learning. Most of our customers have terminology boards within their organization. So they're looking at what Acrolinx is providing them in the terms of feedback on a weekly basis and making changes to that terminology. I think if you think forward as to where this goes, we have the ability to make those changes automatically, but we choose not to, because this isn't intended to be a draconian overlord. We're not trying to be the Terminator, and that's why we don't auto-generate content right now. Could we? Yes. Do we? No. So, for instance, if I wanted to change every instance of the words Kevin Benedict in a document, right now, we would flag all of them and allow somebody to change those. We don't need to. We could just let you click, find all of them, make sure that it's relevant, and then change them. But again, human choice to be able to define the way that you create content. And the reason that matters is because, for instance, in my directory, the word client is problematic in software. So we want to differentiate using the word client to refer to a piece of software, for instance, versus a customer. But we can't just manage that. We can't take action on that because I might actually mean to use it the way that I'm using it. And so it's very important to give the writer the ability to have that control. Future looking, it's likely that we would allow customers to start making that decision to turn on automatic changes and start seeing that content automatically edited.
Oh, that's interesting. A couple words here. We talk a lot about aligning content with strategy. What do you mean by strategy? And when somebody sits in the room and says, what is our strategy that we have to align our content to? What does that look like?
Where I go with strategy from an us standpoint, it's the how you write your content. It's the things, the non-negotiables about the qualities of your content. So when we talk about clarity, what does clarity mean? It means writing at an education, a Fleisch reading level that is applicable to your audience. It's about using the right number of words, not only for a sentence or a paragraph, but for the medium that you're creating it for. So are you creating for mobile? Then it's important that the system understand that you can't have 42 word titles, for instance, on a mobile device. So from a clarity standpoint, it is that readability for the medium. It's the readability for your audience. It's also the ability to scan that content. If you think in terms of what the end goal of a lot of content is, it's conversion. So scannability becomes very important. Have you created a piece of content that is easily and quickly understandable? Because if you only get, 30 seconds of on-page time, something that you would see in your Google Analytics, time on page. How do I get my point across quickly and effectively?
Right.
Because what we're aiming for, but I can talk all day about the efficiency of eliminating a lot of the copy editing and getting more content created in less time with less people.
Right.
But the end goal of all of this content, really, the customer experience end goal. So it's findability, it's conversion, it's customer satisfaction, product usage, all the things that are the end goal of creation of content. So if I'm going to get beyond just efficiency to conversion, that scannability, that readability matters to me. If I'm going to get to findability as the thing, increase the volume of people that find this content, it's about using the right words to be found. So terminology and SEO management, which we can do both with our findability and with partners and plugins that we have to our product to make content more findable. When I talk about consistency, it's style rules. I think AP style guidelines, for instance, so that all of your content is aligned and seems similar. And then brand language. So one of the things that we're releasing this year is currently unnamed, but for the purpose of discussing it, I will call it acro tags, not the name, not the branding, just what I'm calling it today. Saying that more for my team than anybody else when they watched it. But it's the ability to create a central repository of brand language. So simple example, tagline. So ours is better content faster. Yeah. Rather than having all of your writers have to know on a day-to-day basis how to use your language, we can type TL in a document, and when it's checked by Acrolinx, that TL is the tag that's recognized to fill in the tagline. And so that tagline lives central. And if the tagline changes in the middle of the night from better content faster to faster content better, I don't need to know that as the writer. I just type tagline and TL, and when it's checked, it's filled in. And I can do that across all of our brand language, which means that for new writers coming in that don't know how we communicate, don't know the things that are important, that's available to me. That means that if I'm a pharmaceutical company with extensive regulatory compliance language, for instance, right. And I type something, the name of a drug, and there's additional language that needs to go along with that, we recognize the name of the drug as the tag, and we provide you with all content. So it's going beyond just this idea of writing clearer content to writing the right content.
Oh, that's brilliant. So talk to me about the scope of your solution. Is it something that you use on a Microsoft Word? Is it something that you can use in a cloud-based word processor?
We work where you work. Okay. So we live inside simple things like Word and Google Docs. But we also work inside Madcap Flare and Adobe products and your CMS. Where your writers are writing is where the sidebar will sit. The sidebar is the visual manifestation of the platform. You teach in our capture component. So you teach the platform, and that is the majority of work happens is within the platform. From a writer standpoint, what you see is a sidebar where you do your check, where you have access to all of your cards, where you see your overall scorecard. That's where you do your writing work. And that sidebar sits within hundreds of different authoring environments right now.
So the crazy side of my brain is saying, someday this is going to correct my own grammar when I'm up front speaking or something, at least from a YouTube video or something, where if I say something wrong, the right words are inserted and it's generated.
That's the future, right? Because we're talking about customer experience and customer touch points and how much of your customer experience is moving to verbal and video. And so if this is the thing today, if we had a script for what we were doing right now, we would have already checked it. Yeah. And we would have run it all through and we would be reading a script that was approved and aligned through Acrolinx. The future of this, as processors get faster and smarter, is the ability to see this in front of us as we talk and recognize things. And then if we had, for instance, a plug into something like Zoom, the ability to actually scrub backwards several seconds and deliver the correct words. I would love that. I would definitely get some use out of that.
Well, that's exciting. Well, Chris, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights and the brilliance on how artificial intelligence can be applied to the content strategy space. So thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me.